I'm Simon Griffis. I'm the Executive Director of the Ashford Hollow Foundation, which owns and operates both the Essex Art Center and Griffis Sculpture Park. I'll be your guide on a tour of Griffis Park, which is the first and largest sculpture park of its kind in the United States. We enter the park through this colorful oriental arch by Peter Schneider from Reading, Pennsylvania. Peter used enamel car colors to produce this striking piece. Dave Poulin, an artist from Jamestown, New York, created this piece, The Bronze Man. Dave now shows his work extensively in Germany and Paris and is developing an excellent international reputation. Here's a work in granite called the Dragon Head, carved by Dave Hill, an artist from Buffalo, New York. Joe Cozio created this interactive head. Kids young and old love this piece. You can climb inside and take a seat and become its brain. Joe worked at Talix, which is the largest bronze foundry in the United States, located in Upper New York State. This is another piece by Peter Schneider called Gun Face. This great abstract sculpture is a commentary against guns. Here we are at the pond, one of the real attractions that people love to see at our 450-acre sculpture park. These aluminum bathers were created by my father, Larry Griffis, who founded the park in 1969.
I'm not the kind of guy who's a social artist who wants to tell you about the pain of our society. I want to tell you about the joy of my experience, how I'm stimulated by what happens around me in the landscape and among my acquaintances, friends, and family. So I usually work in series. If I'm, when I paint, it's going to be 30 paintings. I'm not going to quit until I've done a good slug of paintings. And when I make sculpture, it's probably going to be 6 or 7 works in a series. Like the bathers that we may look at later at the pond, there's 10 of those, and that's sort of typical.
These bathers were created in plaster by my father and cast in aluminum at our foundry at the Essex Art Center. My father loved the ducks, geese, and swans, which are in the pond year-round. My father, Larry Griffis, founded the Ashford Hollow Foundation, which owns and operates both Griffis Sculpture Park and the Essex Art Center. We're a not-for-profit educational organization. We have approximately 4,000 youth every year. We use the arts to enhance social and leadership skills, as well as math, science, language arts, and social studies. Done in a sandcast process and then welded together. The sculptures are 8 feet high and surround the pond as well as being in the pond. Almost dancer-like, these beautiful forms were done in a series, using the same model who worked with my father in the 1960s. My father made everything site-specific. He built the pond and placed the sculptures exactly so the scale works. The trees around the bathers are not that high. They are in conjunction with the scale of the bathers, allowing a view of the beautiful vistas behind. the tower, the bathysphere, the sub, and the mushrooms were done as a series, created by Larry Griffis with students in a publicly funded arts and education program that taught disenfranchised teens how to weld. These students went on to become professional welders in many different places all over the country. We've received letters from them. They've come back to the park to view their work. These pieces are very playful and interactive. This is the Aquarian Man, created by my brother, Larry Griffis III.
This piece behind me here, I did this sculpture back when I was in college. I finished at my senior year of college, and my father, who I apprenticed for about 4 years from the age of 14, he found me a mentor at Goddard College, which is Peter Ruddick. And under Peter, I did this piece, and my father really liked it, so he cast it into aluminum in his own foundry. So my dad was he was a powerful man. I mean, he could have a vision, but then he could create it. He could build it himself or get a crew to build it with him. Foundries, anything that it required, whether it was big cranes, big equipment, he was the one who could channel all that into a creative vision, which I think is pretty unique. I mean, that's a real challenge for artists, using industry, using technology to make something beautiful that people can enjoy.
Here's the butterfly chair, produced by my brother, Mark Griffis.
A lot of artists pick one media. To capture one media and become expert in one media is a phenomenal tribute to any person or artist. But my dad took on such a variety of media and was accomplished and fluent and prolific in all of it.
The Bronze Man, by Italian artist Peroni, was acquired by the park in the early 70s. This life-size sculpture appears in a Tai Chi position. This work, called Railroad Tied 2, was created by L. Frega out of railroad ties bent with a forge and heat. We have bird houses all over the park. This is Steel Tubes by John Bjorgi, a sculptor who has worked with us for many years. Very technically advanced, you can see the welding and finishing work is at the highest level. Tiki 2 by Maria Hall can be seen from miles away. Notice the spectacular grinded striations. You can see the three-dimensional spirals on the gleaming steel. Really beautiful, one of my favorite pieces. This is the Castle Tower, created in the late 70s and erected in the early 80s. This piece was a collaborative effort by my father Larry and my brothers Larry and Mark. This weighs many tons. That's a stainless steel weld you're looking at, made from 5/16 of an inch rod. Thousands of Core 10 steel rods were welded on the inside, and the outside is composed of stainless steel rods so it'll never rust. It's so structurally sound that a sledgehammer wouldn't even dent it. Another interactive piece, you can climb up the tower right to the peak. It's almost like a ship, and placed at the highest point in the park, it has a gorgeous view. This is the Gerst exhibit. Leon Gerst is a sculptor from Pennsylvania, and all these are his creations. The park acquired them in the mid-'80s. They're a terrific grouping of abstract sculptures, some with animal forms. This whole area is devoted to Leon's work. He was a wealthy gentleman who had a studio at his home, and these artworks were displayed throughout his property. Mark Griffis sits on the board of directors and is on the committee that is responsible for sculpture maintenance. With more than 250 sculptures, that's a lot of work. The Foundation's partnership with the Buffalo State Sculpture Department is a key component in the ongoing and relentless maintenance schedule. This piece by Leon is called The Tower. This is Leon's The Seahorse. The orange one, with holes in it, is called the Peace Umbrella. Here we have Starry Night, comprised of little moons and stars, all made from found objects. This is the Raygun, a large found object piece. Here it is from a different angle. This group of nudes were created by Larry Griffis using the same female model. Larry's genius was in creating site-specific sculptures. The height and size of the nudes were determined by the forest alcove. The same sculptures placed in an open field would not be as successful because they would not be able to visually compete with the vast landscape. They would look small and out of place. In the alcove, they have the necessary scale and visual impact. They look like they're emerging from the forest. Here's Stargazer by Larry Griffis Jr., the originator of the park. It's about 12 feet tall. Let's examine the origin of the creation of the park with family members.
In the 1950s, when my father was a young man, in fact younger than any of the 7 of us are now, and I was 7, 8, 9, 10, my father belonged to the country club, had short hair, wore a tie every day, and had a nylon stocking business. He designed a beautiful hot pink box for the Fantashear stockings and traveled all over this part of the United States selling those stockings. He actually did study textile design and was prepared by his father to go into the lingerie business. When he came back from the war, his father said, "You really should go to art school." And my father really did not want to go to any school at all. He'd had enough of being directed by his superiors and wanted to either go to work or do something on his own.
And when the war was over and I was still in France, I was traveling in a train, and we did a lot of travel by boxcar. You know, they put the troops in a boxcar. And I had this dream that there was this person in the boxcar sleeping on a cot. And he was dreaming about an artist standing at an easel. And the person sleeping was in sort of olive gray, you know, or olive drab. But the guy at the easel was purple and red, and the painting was, you know, big and very vigorous. I woke up from the dream and I said, well, this is it. Obviously, I'm not going to go back and go into the textile business. I'm going to tell the family I'm going into the art, which I did. I went back and told them. I said, yeah, so how are you going to do it?
My father began molding his first sculptures at home in our living room on Richmond Avenue. He worked by night in the studio in the basement before constructing a very nice studio in our backyard. This would never be satisfying enough. The space wasn't large enough. His ideas were always big, and he had a vision, I think, that was beginning to form at that time of an outdoor space, a way he could show sculptures that he had not even begun to work on. He was making heads of Willie and Mark and I. He wasn't making large nudes, but he was certainly thinking about where he would put such things if he ever did make them. He began to think about leaving his business, and my grandfather really pushed him over the brink when he said, you must choose between art and business. My grandfather assumed my father would choose business, but my father readily said, okay, I've had it. I'm going to be an artist. And we left. We left Buffalo. We went to live in Rome, Italy. People said, where are you going? And he'd say Rome, and they'd say Rome, New York. And my father would say, no, Rome, Italy. And he left in May of 1960 and traveled and found us a house in Rome, and we later joined him.
When I made the choice to go out of business and into art, I knew it would be difficult, but I thought it would be worth it. In other words, I didn't expect it to be easy, but I thought the hard times will be worth it, because when I was in the business, I was just so sick in my head, sick with longing to do what I wanted to do, you know. I can't look on it as any kind of a sacrifice.
His original studio was Finisher Nylons, the headquarters and factory for that business, which he was the president of. He retired from the business and turned that into his studio, and some of the very original works here are from that studio. He then asked my brothers and I to move him to a new studio on the west side of Buffalo on Essex Street. We took, 20 pickup loads of paintings and sculpture and nude women and all kinds of things, nude statues of women.
This area of the park is devoted to some of my father's earliest castings. This is Oriental Princess, cast in aluminum. The helmeted aluminum figure is Saint Joan of Arc. Originally done in bronze, they were then cast in aluminum. My mother, Tish Blaine, is curator of all the original bronzes. Here's Delphine Wang. Mr. Wang was the first treasurer on the board of directors. Here's Larry W. Griffis Sr., my father's father, my grandfather. This is my grandmother, Ruth Hayes Griffis. The sculpture park is named after her. She donated the first 200 acres for the park. That's my brother, Will Griffis, originally sculpted in Italy in 1960. My older brother, Larry Griffis. There's my sister, Pam Ferrari. There's my brother, Mark Griffis, in aluminum, also sculpted in Rome, Italy. That's Lisa Griffis Davis, my older sister, done in the 1980s. My brother, Damian Griffis. This is my mother, Tish Blaine, done in the 1960s. This piece exhibits the exaggerated neckline that my father loved to include in his work.
Hi, I'm Mark Griffis, and I'm sitting here in the Essex Art Center in Buffalo, New York. A place my dad bought in 1969 and turned into a thriving arts community. Over the years, there's been many galleries, famous artists, designers, sculptors, painters, poets, writers, and filmmakers come through our doors. We have over 100,000 square feet of studios, studio apartments, lofts, and carriage houses. In fact, in 1970s, Hall Walls was here with Robert Longdo, Charlie Clow, and Richard Zwack, as well as Cindy Sherman, who still thrives in photography on the international market. SEPA Gallery started here as well, a photographic and film gallery. The Artist Gallery thrived for about 15 years here at Essex Street. Right now we have the Big Orbit Gallery, run by Sean Donaher, who has a lot of local art involved in great shows that are very important works here in Buffalo. Over the years also we've had many events. My uncle Rod Griffis started the Courtyard Theater right in our courtyard outside here, and it became a very well-known theater group that moved on to Hoyt Street in Buffalo later on. Most of the sculpture work was made right here, cast in a foundry my father started in aluminum and bronze. They cast maybe 20, 30 pieces for Griffis Park right next door. And many of the large, stately wrought iron and steel pieces and stainless steel pieces were made right here at Essex Street as well and shipped out to Griffis Park in East Otto and Ashford Hollow and erected there. As you approach Essex Art Center, you'll notice a large, long brick facade. On that facade is a mission statement for the building, stating why we're here. There's also a history of the building. Signage that says the Essex Art Center. There's a sign for Griffis Studios. And soon, my brother Simon Griffis will start his new programming right next door in his 5,000 square foot area.
This is another piece by Leon Gerst called Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. We've arrived at the area called Grand Parade. It's a gorgeous natural promenade lined with wild grasses and flowers. This is the famous maze produced by Wes Elmstead and Larry Griffis in the mid-1970s. Wes collaborated with my dad at the Essex Art Center. This is a terrific interactive piece. This is Carface, one of Wes's signature pieces made from discarded automobile parts. Here's a bronze by Tony Patterson, who was head of the sculpture department at the University at Buffalo for decades and recently retired. See all the smooth, organic forms. This piece was placed very close to the tree line to enhance the scale. We collected this beautiful bronze directly from the artist, Tony Patterson. That's Mrs. Barton, a life-size aluminum figure. My mother, Tish Blaine, is to the right in an evening gown. This is the Upper Reflection Pond, a man-made pond surrounded by sculptures. This is the Nail Tower by Frank Toole. Imagine, if you can, all the countless nails that were welded together to produce this majestic piece. It's all nails. What an enormous task. You're looking at steel plate, created by Michael Preisner. John Bjorge's 3 columns sits to the right, and to the left you have the park's performance stage, designed by Rob Hayes and Mark Griffis. The Native Americans referred to this beautiful region as the Enchanted Mountains. Right now, we're on our performance stage at 2,100 feet with the Enchanted Mountains in the backdrop. On the stage, we have dance, we have music, we have star parties, we have iron pours, bronze pours, and all sorts of other events. To keep updated on our events, check our webpage, which is griffispark.org, GRIFFISPARK. One of the dynamic aspects of the sculpture park is this marvelous sense of discovery that our visitors experience. When you come down this hidden trail, all of a sudden you're greeted by 3 gigantic Amazon women. The Amazons are a grouping of 15-foot tall figures placed in the forest. Worshipper in her yoga pose. My father designed a park spread over 400 acres of rolling hills, forests, meadows, ravines, 10 miles of trails, and 7 man-made ponds. Welcome to our animal kingdom. This is certainly one of the favorite spots of young and old alike. There are pieces that you can climb up and ride. There's a giant giraffe, a crab, a turtle, a dinosaur, and even a gigantic snake. The Cobra was created through a publicly funded program for youth. There he is, in all his grandeur. The 6-legged crab was produced by Mark Griffis at a college project. Here's the beautiful sea green, ocean-going turtle. This piece, called Deserted, is used as a symbol of the park. It's located in the Roar Hill site, which was the original 200 acres of the park. All the pieces in the original park were created by Larry Griffis. They are all made of Core 10 steel, and they're 15 to 20 feet high.
Well, I'm a landscape painter to start with, see, and I like my sculpture on the landscape. But there's almost no subject that I don't have interest in. And the human figure, the head, the nude figure, the clothed figure, and the insect, but big, because I can't do anything dinky. It's very hard for me to do anything small. I can't get a dollar bill out of my wallet. My fingers don't work that way. You know, if you got a sledgehammer and you want something nailed or something, that's a little better.
These are the fecund figures, which means full of life. We had a very large family, and I think my father was affected by that. He created these fecund figures as testimonies to women who were with child. These are all Core 10 steel that have been painted in bright colors. A wonderful feature of this material is it creates an earthy patina because it rusts a little bit and then it stops. My father is credited with this technique of taking many bars and welding them together. These giant candlesticks are 10 feet high. During different events at the park, we light the torches on the top. This is the original man-made pond, the first of 7 created in the 60s at the park. This is the bishop, soaring to a height of 24 feet. As you enter the park from the lower hill site, the first thing you see are these huge guardians welcoming all visitors to the park. These extremely interesting pieces are some of the tallest pieces at the sculpture park.
Then there's the situation where you have a big open space and you've got to put some sculptures there, which I was faced with at the East Hill after we moved from Kissing Bridge. Well, if you place 3 vertical objects in a very close proximity to each other, then those 3 objects are going to be, if they're close, they're going to seem to be tall figures, okay? Now, if you have, those are vertical forms. Now, if we take the same vertical forms and put them in a big field and separate them, they're not so tall anymore, okay? So, when you're out there using the space, placing them on the landscape, you have the problem of the whole space, the woods, the sky, the field, and you have to understand what your objective is. If you have a tall figure, you made it tall, you made it 28 feet tall, and then you make it look 5 feet tall, you've defeated yourself. And so you say, that was a bad idea. Either we go and find a new location for that statue where it's going to look as tall as it is, or maybe taller, or else If you've got to have it there, then plant a whole bunch of trees around it, which we've done.
This is a series called Flying Geese. Viewed from a distance, from the bottom of the hill, they appear to be flying across the sky. The king, the queen, and the bishop were created in the 60s. It's a marriage ceremony. The bishop is marrying the king and the queen, and it's the theme of the park. It's the marriage of art and nature, the king and the queen representing the art and nature.
Bronze melts at a certain temperature, at a higher temperature than aluminum. And stainless steel melts at a still higher temperature than bronze. But if you had a millennium, it would all melt, right? So there isn't anything that we can use in the way of material that's permanent. I mean, if it's made of granite, it eventually, the water will work its way. So the only thing that's permanent in all of life is the effect that the sculpture has upon the person who views it and upon the person who makes it. The soul of the man, each man, the man who makes it and the man who views it, his soul is changed, for better or for worse, by the work. And that is carried into the future, either for his progeny, his family, or for generations.
These beautiful cabins were built in the Adirondack style. They are used as camp housing for youth art and education programs and for artists in residence. They were designed by Jerry Cabada, and the financing was provided by Gene Knox.
Went from the initial designs onto actually standing on the porch. You know, we used a lot of wild materials that we've gotten from one hill over, two hills over, and we worked with lumber mills, and we had wood cut especially for the purpose of these cabins alone.
Mark, I had a house on an island in Canada, and Mark thought I needed to build a studio because he'd been up there. And so he introduced me to Jerry, and in the process, Jerry and I started drawing and mulling ideas, and the next thing we knew, we were suddenly doing these wonderful cabins, which are here now, for Griffis Park, which is really one of the nicest, best things I've ever done in my life, because it's such a special, special place, and so many people are going to be affected by it. And it's great. And it all started with Jerry's drawing, and if he hadn't done that drawing, I wouldn't have caught the bug.
Here are works by Glenn Swigert. Glenn does a magnificent job of assembling stone, iron, enamel, bronze, and glass. Glenn is originally from Kansas and is currently head of the sculpture department at Alfred State University in southern New York State. He is a renowned international sculptor. This is Big Orbit by nationally known artists Frank Fantazzi and Mardad. Sculpture was created out of 2,000 pallets at the Essex Art Center courtyard. When the crane came to lift it out of the courtyard to deliver it to the park, it was too heavy. The artist had to disassemble the sculpture and label every part. This is John Sura's landscape. He creates beautiful welded landscapes out of plate steel. Very nice. Here's another piece by Glenn Schweigert. Glenn casts his own glass to create the perfect color that he likes. He then drills through the granite to insert the glass. Thank you for allowing me to be your host of Griffis Sculpture Park. The park is open from May 1 to October 31st. In the wintertime, we're open for private tours only. We run snowshoe and cross-country ski tours. All year long, we have our cabins available for rental. So please come and visit us. I'd love to see you here, and check our webpage, griffispark.org.